Evening, family. Sorry, it's been a bit since we've jumped back into the Psalms, but let's get right back into Psalms 1 as we look at the sad conclusion of the man who does not follow God's prescription for the permanently happy man. So let's look at the verses. Let's recap verses 1 through 4, and we're going to focus tonight on verse 5. Psalm 1. How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of Yahweh, and in his law he meditates day and night. And he will be like a tree firmly planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. And in whatever he does, he prospers. And the last time we talked, the wicked are not so. They are not like the permanently happy, the blessed man. They do walk in the counsel of the wicked. They do stand in the way of sinners. And that's actually going to be important in these verses here. They do sit in the seat of scoffers. They do not delight in the law of Yahweh. They do not meditate in his law day and night. And therefore they are not like a tree planted by streams of water. They do not yield fruit in their season, and their leaf does wither. And in whatever they do not prosper, especially ultimately one day in the judgment. The wicked are not so. They are like chaff, rather. Things that are blown away, things that are useless, worthless, easily moved and shaken by circumstances and tribulations. And therefore, verse 5, the conclusion of the matter, therefore, the wicked will not rise in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. The wicked will not rise in the judgment, rise in the congregation of the righteous. The people that choose this path, the people that reject the word, the law, ultimately the scripture. That's what the law in the Old Testament points to. As those that reject it, they will ultimately not rise in the judgment. Interesting way to say that. They won't rise in the judgment. You think of judgment as two people standing, and maybe you think of a courtroom, and the judge gets up, or as he comes in the room, everyone says, all rise. That's not quite what we're talking about. It's more in the sense of in the last days, as we have this final judgment of the Lord. Those that rise are the ones that are deemed worthy. They're the ones that are proclaimed righteous. They're the ones that are accepted, as in, let me call your name out and you can come up and receive your reward. Let me give to you the final fruit, the final reward for your labor. And he says the wicked will not rise. They won't be able to stand. They won't be able to get up. Their name is not going to be called. The wicked will not rise in the judgment of God. It reminds me of what we've been talking about in John chapter 5, where Jesus himself talks about the two resurrections. He says in John 5, verses 25, he says, truly, truly, I say to you, an hour is coming and now is when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. People that have come to faith in Jesus will live. They'll stand in the judgment, as we're looking at in Psalms 1. For just as the Father has life in himself, he gave it to the Son to have life in himself, and he gave him authority to execute judgment, because he is the Son of Man. He's the promised one. Do not marvel, for an hour is coming in which all who are in the tombs will hear his voice. Jesus himself says everyone's going to live, or maybe die somewhere forever. You will exist somewhere forever. Jesus' words himself in John chapter 5. They will come forth as those who did the good deeds to a resurrection of life. This is not saying that your good works save you, but rather that the outcome of your salvation results in good deeds, and those that have done those good deeds, that is a resurrection of life, and those who committed evil deeds to a resurrection of judgment. I can do nothing for myself, he says. As I hear, I judge. My judgment is righteous, because I do not seek my own will, but the will of him who sent me. And Jesus is saying that at the end of a passage where he claims to be the Messiah. He claims to be God himself in John chapter 5. And here in Psalms 1, we see that the judgment is coming for those who do wicked, who are in the way. And then it says, nor sinners, neither will sinners. It's parallel here. Wicked will not rise, and nor will sinners rise in the congregation of a righteous. So there's a clear twofold grouping. The judged will not rise, but those that do rise are not the ones who are in the way of sinners. This is not a people that have sinned, because if we look at it, nor sinners in the congregation, if he's saying that anybody that has ever sinned will not rise in the congregation of the righteous, then that's excluding every single person on the planet ever. Every single one of us is a sinner, as it says in Romans 3:23. But here he's talking about those that are in the practice, in the way of sinners, as it said in verse number 1. The pathway, the pattern of living, they will not stand in the congregation of the righteous. At that day, when the Lord judges the living and the dead, the wicked will not rise. So which group are you? Which judgment will you face? Will you face God's wrathful judgment because of sin, or will you face a joyful judgment where you're forgiven and he says, welcome? So I hope you have a blessed day.